So now, obviously, I know you had some pretty recent you had a recent win at UFC San Antonio, pretty recently actually.
Yes, sir. It was the Cheeto versus Vera card in San
Yeah,
Antonio.
yeah, that one. I remember. So obviously, and then you had like another. You're on a two fight win streak.
Correct.
At, yeah, because you also had another win at UFC 278 on the
Yeah, that's
Usman
right.
versus Leon card. Yeah. So what was it like winning those fights?
It was really cool. The Usman Edwards card was really cool. Before that, it had been a long time, few years before I performed in front of a crowd. So the last time I performed in front of a big crowd was when I fought for the LFA, and that was before COVID. So that was about maybe 2.5 years. And then I did the Contender Series and then my pro debut, both at the Apex. And the Apex doesn't really hold a big crowd. So
Yeah.
after those 2 years, the LFA, my last two LFA fights, which were both in COVID restrictions with very limited crowd, and then the Dana White Contender Series, and then my pro debut, all with limited crowd. So it had been about 2, 3 years before since I had been in a big crowd. And then the Usman versus Edwards card. After 2.5 years, I go and I just hear the big ass crowd. So I went from hearing the biggest crowd for the LFA card, waiting 2 years of no crowd, and then just hearing this amazing welcome by Salt Lake City. It was just, really cool, really cool, really hyped me up, really gets everybody going. And it just made me realize, okay, we need to make sure that these people that are excited remain excited. So let's give them a show. And so we did. We just went out, we went striking, we just threw it everything we had and landed in TKO first round, just how I wanted it to be finished. And then this coming fight, this one was a little difficult because of the preparation. I just switched teams, and
Okay.
it wasn't something that was planned. It wasn't something that I wanted to do, but there is no lack of talent in this world. So I was able to really quickly put together everything I needed to ensure that this fight camp was sufficient enough for this fight. So we did this in very short notice. I didn't really have what you would call a very specific fight camp for this. My fight camp preparing for my last fight basically entailed my coaches and me going to separate gyms where good grapplers and good strikers could give me a good training session. But as far as having a dedicated training session full of partners to have MMA rounds and replicate the fight, we didn't have that. We just had to go find the best grapplers and the best strikers and do it separately. And then we had to put it together, getting ready for this fight.
Oh, that's good. No, obviously, actually, I do remember when during COVID when the UFC didn't have like anyone performing, like no audience, no anything, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, do you personally prefer fighting in front of the audience or do you prefer without an audience?
Um, I don't really mind either one, to be honest with you, but I do like the crowd. I do like the crowd because at the end of the day, the sport is as big as it is because the people watching it, because the
Yeah,
fans showing up, their love and support. And although the show their love and support through pay-per-views, through the TV, to tuning in and watching the fights, you don't feel that unless
yeah,
they're physically present. So having a fight where there's very limited audience also gives you a different type of I would say vibe, right? You're
okay,
both
yeah,
more you're both it almost feels like a very intense training session. And from
yeah,
the point of view of a practitioner and an artist, it's really comforting to just be you, your opponent, and your corner. And then that's it. That's it. It's just a little bit more intimate, a little bit more, I guess, personal because no one's gonna make noise for you. No one's gonna make a noise if you land a strike or whatever. No, everything's
yeah.
composed, and it's up to you to remain in that composure that you have. But they're so different. I like them both, to be honest. They just bring out different energies.
Okay, that makes sense. So, Obviously, if I'm not mistaken, you fight out of Texas, right?
Yeah, Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, Texas. And what exactly, what gym do you train at? Can you mind me asking?
Right now, I train at Double Five in Mid Cities, and
Okay,
out also out of VFit in Arlington, which are my
okay,
two main gyms right now.
okay. That's good to hear. So, obviously, leading up to your fights like so far, like how has your training camps been?
Has leading up to my fighting camp to this
Yeah,
last fight.
like to your fights.
Oh
Yeah,
well, it was I would just be here every day. I would show up. My coaches would show up. I would go train with James Vick, another veteran of the UFC who also just won his karate combat bout. Shout out to James.
okay,
And it was Michael Malone, which was my jiu-jitsu coach, and training under Rafael Formiga's guys, who is a world-renowned grappler, and a lot of world-renowned grapplers train at Double Five. So I got definitely good grappling rounds with them. The strikers from George Pavlovsky, Robert Citacion, and Eric Flores, which were
okay,
in my area. They have amazing striking talent and MMA guys as well. And then, of course, the grapplers from Double Five. So basically, I just spend my fight camp going to these different gyms, exposing myself to the specialists of each craft, and then putting it together to implement it into the fight.
okay. That makes sense. Now, obviously, I think you mentioned earlier, you actually did fight on the Dana White Contender Series. What was that like?
That was really cool. It was a really cool experience. It was the first time I realized how important this sport has become to the world.
Yeah,
Before you just train, you join a gym, and this is important to you. You like it. You go to tournaments. People will go to tournaments, and they like it. Whatever. You step outside of the gym, and then hardly anybody knows what is it that you do. Hardly anybody knows what is it that you love about it. And here I come into the Dana White Contender Series, and everybody is all about it. Even people who don't practice the sport are
yeah,
really into the sport. You realize that there are a lot of people in this world who don't practice the sport, but yet love it. And
yeah,
then it opened my eyes and I realized, wow, this is a lot bigger than I thought. This passion that I've been pursuing for a long time, it's a lot bigger than I thought it was.
yeah,
And it was really wonderful and beautiful to see that, to realize that something that I thought was I was part of a minority was actually a big thing all over the world. And whenever I saw the fight at the Contender Series, I got to witness a fighter from Brazil and a fighter from Russia. Two people from completely different hemispheres of this globe, different cultures, different languages, speaking those different languages simultaneously inside this one room, inside this one cage. And these two people that have nothing to do with each other except for the passion of fighting got together so that the world could see. And that was really cool.
yeah. So obviously, once you ended up getting your UFC contract, what was that like? How like happy were you?
I was very happy. And I also knew that there was a lot of work to be done. I also knew that from this point forward, there was no easy fight. There was no easy opponent. There was only high caliber, and I knew that I needed to step up. And I was excited. I was like, okay, cool. Now we get to up our training. Now we get to, really show the people why we belong in the big leagues.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Now, you obviously came from like LFA and like, coming from there, like how different was that compared to going and fighting into the UFC?
Well, as far as the production goes, it's pretty similar. Of course, the UFC has a bigger budget and they're able to go a little more out, but
Yeah,
everyone's always nice. As far as how people treat you amazing at the LFA. You need anything, they're good for you. You need, some water, they give you water. Your gloves are taken care of. They make sure that you're healthy. They make sure that you're okay. And the UFC is just like that, but more. For example, you have the PI who's constantly making sure that you're on weight, trying to help you out with meals, trying to make sure that you are coming into the fight as prepared as possible and as healthy as possible. And I think the only difference between the LFA and the UFC is their budget, really, because their intentions are just as good. The LFA wants their fighters to succeed and to put on a great show, and they do whatever they can to make sure they ensure that. The UFC has the same intentions. They just have a bigger budget, so they're able to, send you food meal preps from the PI, send you supplements from the PI, making sure that you have access to people in case you have questions about your weight cut, in case you have questions about your medicals. The same intentions are there. LFA and UFC have the same intentions to give the best they can to the fighters so that the fighters can give the best to the fight itself.
Okay. Now, have you actually been to the UFC PI or
Yeah, I've been there twice. Yes.
twice over there? Nice,
Or
nice.
once. I've been there once. Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh, nice. I actually did try to go there, but I didn't know you had to like schedule an appointment ahead of time.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You have to
Yeah,
schedule an appointment.
yeah. But like, cool. Obviously, you mentioned like how you um started off doing MMA and everything, but was there any particular fighter that you like? I guess like you have a favorite?
No, no, I don't have a favorite. I respect all the fighters. I respect anyone who's willing to step into the cage and, display their passion for the sport. But I don't have anyone in particular that, you know, I have a favorite to. I like them all.
Okay. But did you ever have like I guess like a fighter that kind of like inspired you to pursue MMA? Where you were like, okay, maybe I want to do it because he looks kind of cool, or I
No,
don't know
no,
any.
I just do it because I love the sport itself, you know. And there's no, I guess, yeah, there's no really a particular fighter that I look and be like, man, that's this person's inspiring me to do this. There have been fighters that have inspired me to contemplate and explore other techniques and other moves. But
Yeah,
as far as inspiring me to fight, no fighter has triggered that for me. That's not where my inspiration comes from.
that's interesting. That's the first time I've actually heard that. So let me think. So you said that trying to remember. So what are your like plans for the future in the sport?
Well, the goal is to get the belt. The goal is to be the champion. So
Yeah.
whatever it takes to get there.
Okay. How do you think you would do against the current champion?
I think it would be a great fight. I think it would be a good show. I think that um, if the worst case scenario, people have a good show. I think I would do well.
Oh, that's good to hear. Now, I guess like obviously since you're on a 2-fight win streak, who do you want like next?
Whoever they want me to. Whoever they want me to. I know there's been some talks about certain opponents, but being a fighter means you deal with what's in front of you. So whoever they think should be next, if it's a champion, I'll take the champion. And if it's not, then we'll see what's up.
Okay. I mean, I'm guessing you would probably prefer someone, I guess, in the top 15. I'm guessing, right?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.